Okay, so this video is going to be me reviewing the quiz that we took um, today. I'm going to be posting it tomorrow, but I'm recording it pretty late this evening because I want to make sure to get that out there. And then I will, of course, post your grade so you know what you got. I do want to go over the fact just one more time that I do post and two things. Number one, I do post study guides to, thus far, every quiz or test I've ever given, whether it's um even just a little bit or medium or a lot, there's usually something to kind of go off of because we obviously go over a lot of information, so I want you to be aware of what to really kind of hone in on too. And the other thing is the what I posted yesterday in the announcements. I hope I didn't freak a bunch of you out that you did terrible, but as the quizzes were coming in, I was getting really nervous because a lot of people got number one wrong. We will go over the quiz. And then several people got the whatever on the first page. I saw two wrong immediately. So that made me very, very nervous. In the fact that, did I not do something right? Did they not see the study guide? And let me tell you why just real quick, and this will not be a very long video, but I do find it extremely important for, of course, your success in this class. And I put my extra time into posting these and posting the study guides and whatnot. So, I want you to succeed and I want you to do well. So what I mean by that is, for example, two of the questions that were on the test and were missed by some, and this is not a roast, if you will, or that I'm, mad at anybody or, trying to scold anyone. This is me trying to help you. So I did notice that some of the questions that were not gotten correct were directly from here. So, I mentioned several times that you need to know the hallucinations. Most people got that correct. And as well as two of the questions were taken directly from the back of the book, which is on here. And it says which book to use, the ATI book, to look in the back so that they do have those questions and they give you the answer too. So two of them were directly taken from there. And that was the one on the first page. I took one of those questions and I would say like 70% of you got it wrong. So that shows me you didn't potentially look at that. I know you guys had a lot of two tests and a quiz. I did, by the way, talk to Alicia so that her and I would not really overlap as much, but this does happen sometimes, just like midterms, finals. So it's not ideal. But I didn't want to change my date just because I didn't want to push things out anymore. And, you guys actually did, I would say 95% of you got an A. So, and then a couple B's and I think 2 C's. So anyhow, let's jump into it. So I just want to make sure everyone sees this and knows that I do post it. I try to make it as clear as possible. Review sheet for quiz 1, which was week 3, which when I posted this, for the quiz on February 28th, 2022, which was today. So, all right, just want to make sure that everybody knows it's here. I did mention it in class. And there's one other thing. Oh, well, let's just get into it here. Hold on. Let's go over the quiz. I know you guys got things to do. All right, so here is the quiz. So we're going to go ahead and start with number 1. Number 1, true or false? Cogentin, also called, I gave both names, benztropine, is an excuse me, let me just turn my phone off, my apologies, is an antipsychotic medication given to patients who are hallucinating, having delusions and illusions to help stop these symptoms. So for this specific question, and I actually did mention this in class, I remember I was actually looking at a specific student. I remember it clear as day. And a student actually showed me after class in their notes. They said, yes, you did say it, to like almost reassure me, because I was like, did I not cover this or was I not clear? Because again, I do try to be as fair as absolutely possible, that I am giving you the information that you need and that it is given in a way that is understandable. That's why I said, please always ask questions. just as one of the students who sits in the back asked a really, great question yesterday. And, a lot of you do those critical thinking questions to get a really good picture of what's going on, which can then help us answer other questions, right? So, and I actually remember putting like a fake Band-Aid on my arm because that's what I call Cogentin. So I call Cogentin kind of a Band-Aid medication. That's just my term. I would never say that in front of a patient. This is actually not an antipsychotic. This is the medication that we would give a patient if they were having like Parkinsonianism, where their dopamine was falling too low. And actually, I do remember, and the same student I'm talking about that sits in the back asked a really good question the day that we talked about this and asked about, well, what about Parkinson's? Like, could this be a medication that could be helpful for that? And unfortunately, it's not, because they are different. They're the same receptor, but in different parts of the brain. So I do remember very, very clear, and it was on the study guide. But even if it wasn't, I was very clear about understanding it. I think that, and there were maybe 2 or 3, I did word, not to confuse you, but of course to have you really read it. But it's never my intention to confuse you. So the answer to this would be false. This is not an antipsychotic. This is a medication to help with the side effects of antipsychotic medication, to help with the tremors and Parkinsonianism. So if there's any questions about that, of course, let me know. All right, so that one, I feel very confident that we definitely went over it and it was discussed. And again, if you don't understand, please ask, please. I don't care if we have an hour. I don't care if we have 5 minutes. I'll make a video. I'll do whatever I need to do to make sure that everybody is on the same page, or close to the same page, if you will. Okay, number 2, a nurse in a mental health practitioner's office is communicating with a client. The client states, "I stay up all night." The nurse responds, "You are having trouble sleeping. Which of the following therapeutic communication techniques is the nurse demonstrating?" Now, this is a question that came directly from your ATI book, directly in the back, where it gives, not the back of the book, but the back of the chapter. And it gives the answers there, not saying like hopefully you won't understand the question. I would like you to actually understand it. But you literally could have just went in there, got the answer and put it in here, which was on the review guide that I gave you. Again, I picked 2 or 3 of those that I put on here. And this was one of them. And the answer is D, restating. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but of course, because I want you to actually hopefully listen to all of it. And I know that, again, you have a lot to do, and I'm going to be posting other videos. So I'm going to keep this one kind of light, but if you have one, please mark it. I'm going to give you back your quizzes as well, because I do sometimes reuse questions, and I would like you to, let's get it right the second time if you didn't get it right, or get it right again on your midterm, right? So this would be restating, which is a very important thing that we do, because we want to make sure that we're understanding what the client is actually saying. So that has a lot to do with therapeutic communication. A lot of people did put summarizing. I would completely understand those. I would say this can potentially be a confusing question. And I probably wouldn't have given you this question if it were not in the back of the book, only because I don't know if we're quite there yet, but it was in the back of the book and stated to please take a look at that before we take the quiz. Okay, number 3, which of the following patients would be considered a priority to be seen first by the nurse? So I did mention this in the video that I put out, the only video I put out so far. Briefly, as well as right before we took the quiz. So right before we took the quiz, I think I made this pretty clear that the answer was going to be this, a neuroleptic malignant syndrome. Like this is super, super, super important. And that I was going to also post another video, but I wanted to make it clear because that was one thing I dropped the ball on. So I wanted to, again, make sure it's fair, even though I think it is also on the, that thing, the review sheet, but still, I want to make sure it was clear. So who am I going to see first as a priority? These are often very common questions on the NCLEX, so they're important. So would it be the person who is having symptoms of neuroleptic malignant syndrome, which we know can be deadly? A patient who states she is sad, doesn't give me much other information, right? So it doesn't give me much. And again, I don't want to go too deep into this because I will, because I do teach NCLEX. So I don't want to do that here unless you have further questions. And then of course we'll talk about it. Letter C. So between A and B, it's definitely going to be A, because B is not saying a patient who states she is sad and has glass in her other hand is going to slit her wrist. Obviously that patient in that moment is going to be priority because they have glass like at their wrist, right? So hopefully that makes sense. Letter C, a patient who, and we never make things up, so don't make up stories in your head. I will give you some tips and tricks along the way in clinical, as long, also in class, and I will also be posting a depression video because we didn't get to go over those two questions, and I will give some tips and tricks in those as well, which will hopefully help you in your test taking skills for nursing school. So, you know, full circle. Letter C, a patient who is having tremors due to a side effect of her Abilify. I mean, this isn't comfortable, but this patient is not going to be more important than patient A, because this is, we're looking at safety. That is what the NCLEX is based upon, is safety. And A is definitely more of a priority, who you're going to see first. Remember, you're going to see all these patients, but who do you need to see now? If you are the nurse, who are you going to see right this minute? Letter D, a patient who was just put on a 5150 hold, who has a sitter, so someone's with the person, to make sure she is being monitored. That was my hint. She's being monitored. She has someone with her, and the patient is sitting calmly. The patient's calm, waiting to be put into the lockdown facility, psychiatric facility. So there were a lot of cues put into that to let you know that the patient is safe. Now, again, if it said something completely different, patient's going to be put on a 5150, they're bashing their head against the wall, non-compliant, I mean, making it, you know, catastrophic, then it might be, that might be the answer, right? Because in that moment, we need to get that patient back, you know, call for help, do whatever, and then quickly attend to patient A. So out of these, patient A is definitely the most priority. Number 4, which of the following would be considered a negative effect of schizophrenia? Choose all that apply. So I did put this, I can't remember, I think this one might have been in the back of the book, but I know for sure I put it on your study guide, and we did talk about the difference. So in my video that I posted about the difference between positive and negative effects. So positive effects for schizophrenia are those that are added to your personality. So that's going to be like the hallucinations, delusions, and illusions. Negative are things that are taken away. So that's more of like having to do with their serotonin levels, feeling sad. By the way, you'll see I gave it, you'll see dopamine or serotonin on the next page. I didn't word that question right. So I just gave it, I gave anyone credit that did serotonin and dopamine because it was kind of a confusing question. So yeah, really this has more to do with serotonin, because it's, the answer is A and B, because remember, this is the negative side effects, kind of the flat affect, feeling sad, isolation, that part. The positive effects would have to do with the tactile hallucinations and someone having a false fixed belief, which are delusions, which I said in the video that I posted from lecture. So the answer would be A and B. And again, I'm posting another one to make it even more clear. So psychosis, and I said this right before the test as well. I think there were about 3 or 5 of you who did not get this correct. And I said it right before the test. And the reason I'm mentioning this, and I don't even know if you're going to listen to this or if who's listening to this, is because a couple things. A, is it that maybe some people are distracted by their phone. I mean, I'm human. I have my phone out when I'm a student too. I have my phone out in class. I usually try to put it upside down. I'm not surfing the web. I mean, it's an hour class. I could walk around and look. You guys are adults. I don't do that. However, I would like us to pinpoint if there is an issue, if it's potentially not understanding the word, because this on its own is a different language, right? I mean, just some of these things, it's like I can't say them, so I don't even, I can't imagine if this is your second language, this could be very difficult. So please, again, talk to me. Let me help you. I want you to be successful. And I know translation from, one language into another, and then having to learn kind of the nursing language can be very, very difficult, but it can very much be done. So I was a little bit kind of surprised about this one, because I said, okay, guys, just a reminder, what are the you need to know hallucinations. And then I actually said right before I passed it out, psychosis is what? A detachment from reality. Because you guys asked, oh, is there fill in the blank? And that was the one that I said. I think there were two, sorry. But yeah, there's that one. So, which I also said in the video that I posted prior to your quiz. So number 6, true or false, can silence be used as a form of therapeutic communication? That was on your study guide. And I also posted a therapeutic communication packet that was optional to read. But I did ask on there, know the different forms of this. I don't know how I worded it on your study guide, but I made sure that to be able to understand that, yes, silence can absolutely be used as a therapeutic technique for communication. And you'll see much more of that when you go to clinical. All right, the next one would be, which of the following best fits a stereotype? This one was in, I want to say it was one of your match terms, if I'm remembering correctly, because that was on your study guide to look at all the match terms from the beginning to week 3. So it would be the method of raising children, belief in a higher power, an individual thinking they know everything based on his or her own judgment, or a fixed notion or conviction about a group of people or situation. I got a mixture of answers of C and D. I can see why. I definitely could see why, but I graded your paper so you would know what the right answer would be. Again, method to the madness. I'm not trying to confuse you. So the answer is letter D. It's a fixed notion or conviction about a group of people or situation. Number 8, which neurotransmitter is most closely related to schizophrenia and with the symptoms and behaviors when you see negative symptoms? Okay, so with this one, I wanted to say positive symptoms. So the answer would have been dopamine. I put negative symptoms. That's okay. There's still an answer for that, which would be letter C. So if you put B or C, I actually gave you credit because it could be either one, basically. So it's not the frontal lobe because that's not a neurotransmitter, and serotonin and dopamine have the most impact on schizophrenia. So I gave either or. So if you put either one of those. All right, number 9. Now that I'm thinking of it, you know what? To be fair, if you put A, I'm going to give it to you as well, because norepinephrine is a part of like we learned yesterday, it's a neurotransmitter, and it does have to do with schizophrenia. So I'm going to go back right now before I put in the grades. I'll put in the grades tomorrow, so Tuesday. I'm going to give you credit for that. So if you put A, B, or C, I will give you, because A, they're all neurotransmitters, and I wrote the question a little bit confusing and not the way I wanted to. And hey, let's just be fair, right? All right. Number 9. In general, when a patient is taking sorry about the typos, guys, an antipsychotic medication, it is increasing the amount of dopamine or lowering the amount of dopamine. So we've gone over this probably, I don't know, 13, 14, 15 times, at least 10. And I also put it on it's been on lectures we've talked about schizophrenia for quite a while. It's been on all the videos, not all, but some of the videos. It was on that sheet that I gave for the quiz. So if you have schizophrenia, you have an increased amount of dopamine, which means when a patient's taking antipsychotic medication, is it increasing the amount of dopamine or lowering it? We want it to lower it in order to help with the symptoms. So it would be lowering. And the last question before the extra credit is, a nurse's, and this one was in the ATI book as well, directly from there. And I think maybe about 7 people got this one wrong. which is actually really important. So I'm going to talk just a tiny bit about this one. So a nurse is speaking with a client who has schizophrenia when the client suddenly seems to be focusing on the nurse's questions and begins looking at the ceiling and talking to themselves. Which of the following actions should the nurse take? So looking at this question, if we're seeing a patient who has, again, patients with schizophrenia, usually, and again, not everyone's in a box, but more typical patient who has schizophrenia is going to have hallucinations, delusions, and those types of things. So having psychosis or detachment from reality is a part of the symptomology. So having a visual hallucination or an auditory hallucination is what it looks like is happening with this patient because of the behavior. So if you did not notice that, I wanted to make sure to explain that. So what would be the best thing for the nurse to say? So A, stop the interview at this point and resume later when the client is better able to concentrate. B, ask the client, are you seeing something on the ceiling? C, tell the client, you seem to be looking at something on the ceiling. I really need to proofread here. My apologies. On the ceiling, I see something there too. Or D, continue to do the interview without commenting on the client's behavior. Okay, so the answer is B, as in boy. We would definitely want to assess. So we want to assess. We want to know what's going on with our patient. It's not rude to ask them. Of course, we're going to do it therapeutically and ask them, are you hearing any voices, or are you seeing anything, or what, depending on what's going on, and find out, because A, that's assessment. We need to know if they're having these hallucinations or potential delusions or illusions, because that's our job. So we need to definitely know. So that would be number one. The reason why we wouldn't do number three, or sorry, letter C, which I did say right before we took the quiz as well, is that we don't feed into hallucinations. So I mentioned when I said about suicidal ideation, right after that, I talked about hallucinations. What would be the next question? And I said, because we don't feed into hallucinations. So we don't want to say, oh, I see something there too, because then that's feeding into their hallucination. Now, those with dementia and Alzheimer's, it's different, right? We do different things. And I think I mentioned that in a lecture. It's not completely important, but I do like to use that as an example. We might say, oh, yes, your daughter is coming in an hour, because we don't want to upset them, because in probably 15 minutes, they're going to potentially forget, depending on the level of dementia. So it's definitely not letter C. And then D, continue to interview without commenting. Again, we're assessing, so we need to get information. That would be like if somebody came in with a fever, they're saying they're really hot, they look like they're not doing well, they're having symptoms of potential COVID. Are we not going to take their temperature? Of course, we're going to take their temperature. We're not going to ignore it. So hopefully that's a good analogy. And then letter A, stopping the interview. Again, we're here to assess. So what is part of the nursing process? Assess is the first thing. Now, just for fun, I'm going to say this. Now, let's say the client became very agitated, and why are you asking me this, and getting very irritable. That might be different. Then we may stop, for a certain amount of time to help de-escalate, or try to de-escalate. If it doesn't work, then continue the interview later. Then yes, that would fit. But it doesn't say that anywhere in there that they're agitated or anything like that. So do you see what I mean? How we can almost sometimes read into the question or change it? That's one thing we really have to be careful with nursing type questions, because we do, many of us do that, myself included. It took years and years of practice. So I try to help you not do that. So it's going to be letter B. So let me know if you have a question about that, please. And then the extra credit. So again, for this one, I took layman's terms. From now on, I would like the actual terms. So layman's term would be visual, smell, taste, hearing, and touch. For future, the hallucinations are visual, olfactory, which is smell, gustatory, which is taste, auditory, which is hearing, and tactile, which is touch. And that is it for the quiz. So I'm going to save it, and it's pretty late. So I'm gonna post it tomorrow at my lunch at clinical. So I hope this was helpful. Again, I always think it's important to go over the quizzes and tests. How else would you learn and know why you got it wrong? So I figure let's do it here so we don't not waste time, but take up time in class. Other than if you have questions and need reiteration, please make a mark and let me know, and I'll return these back to you guys when I see you on Monday. So thank you very much. And if you have a burning question, feel free to give me an email or a text. Thank you.